Happy Sabbath. Today is June 30, 2018, and we're continuing on the study of the daily, right? And how it was argued at the 1919 Bible Conference, right? All right. Is the daily that is taken away a religion that is keeping the papacy from rising, right? Is it the religion that is keeping the papacy from rising, or is it Christ's ministration in heaven? Okay? Which one is it? You know, and obviously we know that in the 1919 Bible Conference it became a subject of, a subject of contention. What they were. And it was part of Prescott's, his teaching of the person of Christ, that the ministration of Christ is a continual ministration, right? Okay, all right. Just to go and just to remind us, early writings, page 74 and 75. When Ellen White said, "Then I saw in relation to the daily that the word sacrifice was supplied by man's wisdom, right? And does not belong to the text. And the Lord gave the correct view of it to those who gave the judgment hour cry. When the union existed before 1844, nearly all were united on the correct view of the daily. But in the confusion since 1844, other views have been embraced, and darkness and confusion have followed." All right? Okay. Early writing 74 and 75. This is, we discussed this last week. We're going to discuss it even more. Okay? And then who was it that gave the judgment hour cry? Who was it first that found out about the daily? And we knew it was William Miller. This is very important. William Miller realized that the daily sacrifice in Numbers and Exodus was something that is different, that is in the daily sacrifice that is in Daniel. Okay, my question is, how did he figure out that it was different? Why? How did he realize that? Why is it that he said, "Hey, you know what? The daily sacrifice in Daniel 8, Daniel 11, and Daniel 12 is different than the daily sacrifices that's in Numbers and Exodus"? What was Daniel 8, the daily that is in Daniel 8? What is the context? Okay, here you go. This is why you need it, the context. What is the context of the daily in Daniel 8, verse 11? What is the context? What vision? The Chazown vision. What is a Chazown vision? It's a prophetic vision, right? Is the daily sacrifices in Numbers and Exodus, is that in a context of a prophetic vision? No, it's not. Right. What about in Daniel 11, verse 31? Is the daily in a context of a prophetic vision? Daniel 11? Of course, the whole of Daniel 11 is a Chazown vision, right? It's a prophetic vision. So the daily is in a context of a prophetic vision, right? And he says, well, you know what? This is different. And then how did he connect it? With 2 Thessalonians 2, verse 7 and 8, right? We studied this many times before, and we understand how he figured it out. All right. My question is, here's another very important point. Did William Miller require spirit of prophecy to figure out the daily? There was no. That's right. But how did he figure out the daily? Using proof text method, right? He used proof text method. Now, this is very important, because why? So if we are going to defend the daily, should we use Ellen White's Spirit of Prophecy to defend the daily? No. We have to use proof text, because William Miller did not even use Spirit of Prophecy. There was not even Ellen White's Spirit of Prophecy yet. That's right. He just used proof text method. All right. Okay. Now you understand the reason why. Okay. All right. Remember Stephen Haskell. This is very important right here. Stephen Haskell kind of boiled down what was the problem with the old view versus the new view. He says that those who believe in the new view is basically attacking what? Early writings. Early writings 74, 75. They don't believe in the early writings, right? Stephen Haskell, I'm going to defend early writings. This is basically what he's saying. And this is where Ellen White also said, you're wrong. You know, you cannot use my writings to defend the daily. So both sides were wrong. You know, you cannot defend the daily using my writings. Don't defend the daily using my writing, you know. Do what William Miller figured out the daily without using Spirit of Prophecy, Ellen White writings, right? Yeah, okay, all right. All right, so this is where we ended last time. We'll continue, right? So Stephen Haskell, he was on the old view, right? He did not espouse to the new view. Okay. All right. So if we are going to defend the daily just based on the Bible and knowing history, we don't need Ellen White's writings to defend the daily, right? Here we've done this many times before, and we realized that in 508, what happened? That was when the beginning of the kings of Europe starting to give their armies to who? To the papacy. So that now the papacy has the military power to be able to, so to speak, pluck up 3 pagan powers, right? Right. They can pluck up 3 pagan powers, the Visigoths, the Ostrogoths, the Heruli, and the Vandals, right? Right. And finally, in 538, the Ostrogoths were kicked out of Rome, so that now they can control Rome, right? They can have their sanctuary of strength, right? They can control Rome. And what also happened in 538? The papacy was able to institute a Sunday law also, right? At the Third Council of Orleans, right? So from 508 to 538, that's a total of 30 years. The papacy was preparing itself so that now it can persecute God's people uncontested, right? It becomes a desolating power. Before, it was the pagan religion that was the desolating power of God's people. Now it becomes the papal power that was the desolating power for 1260 years until it received a deadly wound in 1798, right? So that's 30 plus 1260 is 1290. So the 1290 points to who? It's pointing out who? The papacy, right? 1290 is pointing out the papacy, right? And we know 1260 is actually 3.5 times, right? 3.5 times is 3.5 years. And this is, all right, after it was healed of his deadly wound, now it receives his seat back. And then it receives his military power back, right? And eventually it receives its dominion back, right? Because this is a counterfeit of the life of Christ. Because the ministration of Christ on earth started after he was hiding for 30 years right? He was setting up his ministry, and then he had a ministry that started at the baptism for 3.5 years and ended when he received a deadly wound. But he recovered from that deadly wound. Right? So, the ministration, could Christ's ministration actually be taken away by the papacy? Could it actually be taken away by the papacy? Could Christ's ministration be actually taken by the papacy? No, it's in heaven. How could the papacy take it away? So how does the papacy, it is argued that the papacy can take away the ministration of Christ. It can be taken away from the minds of the people by corrupting Christ's ministration and creating a counterfeit ministration. So now it is argued that the papacy is taking away Christ's ministration. You can see it that way. Obviously that's a valid argument, right? Okay, the problem is what? The problem is the context. Okay, now we will see what the context is, okay? The problem is the context. All right. What happened in 508 to 538? Okay, this is just a review because this is going to be important when we see Daniel 11, right? 476, Clovis was converted to Catholicism and given the title eldest son of the church, right? And King Arthur became the first English Christian king who was elected monarch in 508, right? Clovis went to war against the Visigoths in 507 in the pretext of fighting Arianism and drove them to Spain in the name of Trinitarianism. In 508, the Heruli was defeated by the Lombards. Belisarius, that's Belisarius right there, the general of the Emperor Justinian, defeated the Vandals, right, and also drove the Ostrogoths out of Rome in March 538. Now, was the Ostrogoths completely destroyed? No, they were not destroyed. They were only removed out of power so that they cannot control Rome anymore. Because now who controls Rome? The papacy. And the papacy eventually was elected as the head of all churches and the head of all bishops and the true and effective corrector of heretics in 533. And then finally in 538, right? Obviously the Ostrogoths were eventually kicked out of Rome in 538, but what also happened in 538? The Third Council of Orleans, that agricultural labor is prohibited on the day of the commemoration of Christ's resurrection. Right? You cannot work on the Sunday. 538. That's a Sunday law, right? Okay. No work. Okay. All right. We've done this before. The crown is removed from Israel and passed successively to the kingdoms, right? And the kingdoms that ruled the northern tribes started with Assyria. And then eventually Egypt also conquered Josiah, right? And then the Babylon came. And then we know that from Revelation 17, 10 to 11, there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short time. So who was it that conquered Israel? And who was it that conquered Israel first? Assyria. And then after Assyria came Egypt. And then after Egypt came Babylon. So now there are 7 kings. 5 are fallen. Okay, Babylon fell, Medo-Persia fell, Greece fell, pagan Rome fell, and the papacy fell. The one that is America. And the other that is not yet to come and will continue for a short space is the United Nations. And the beast that was, and not even he is the eighth. So who is the eighth? He, the papacy, modern Rome, right? Modern Rome was the eighth, right? And is also the seventh, right? And these are the 7 kings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But the eighth, he's actually the 5th also. He's actually the 5th, right? I mean, when you count all these, how many kingdoms were there? Oh, okay, right. No, I actually still have it. Wow, we have thunder and lightning, but I still have, I still have the connection. Okay. All right. Yeah, so we have how many kings? How many kings? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9? 10. There's 10 kingdoms. So those are the 10 kingdoms. See? That eventually will be plucked out, right? Will be lost, right? And those are the 10 kingdoms. There's the 10 toes, right? And the kingdom will come back to Jesus, right? Jesus will. All right. Okay. Let's. All right. Now we're going back. Oh, sorry. Let's go back to here. The darkness and confusion. Darkness and confusion. What is darkness? When there's no light. Right? What is confusion? Babylon. Right? That's confusion. So who was it that gave the judgment cry? The first generation pioneers. Who are the first generation pioneers? This is actually Josiah Litch. Sorry. Last week I said this was Wagner, right? But this is Josiah Litch. This is William Miller, Uriah Smith, Josiah Litch, Joseph Bates, Stephen Haskell. These are the first generation pioneers, right? That held the old pioneer understanding of the daily. And according to Ellen White, they had the correct message. They had the correct understanding of the daily, right? But since then, there comes confusion, darkness, right? And who brought it in? Conradi. And then taught it to E.J. Wagner and W. Prescott and A.G. Daniels and also Willie White. Willie White. Okay, Willie White. All right. Now remember, this is the 1843 chart. Look at the 1843 chart. Does it have the sanctuary there? All right. It doesn't have the sanctuary, right? Because the 1850 chart had the sanctuary there. Okay. All right. This is one of the contentions that is brought in. Because Willie White, remember, last week, Daniels was saying, you know what, I went to Ellen White and I showed them her the chart and I brought early writings to her. And she explained to me, well, you know, I don't have any light on the daily, right? I don't have any light, but I have the light. It's shown me in the 2300 days, it fixes, it is fixed, right? All right. So Willie White says, you know what, at one point, I went with Elder Daniels, right? And C.C. Chrysler, the secretary of Ellen White, and went to her to understand what was the meaning of early writing statements, right? 74 and 75. And went to her and laid the matter before her and took him, and Daniels took with him early writings and what? 1843 chart. And when they were showing that 1843 chart according to Willie White, right? Then I placed before her our prophetic chart used by our ministers in expounding the prophecies of Daniel and Revelation, and called her attention to the picture of the sanctuary. Wait a minute.
There's no picture of the sanctuary. No.
So if you're a lawyer, you go up there, okay, Willie White, did you really? You said you brought the 1843 chart. And you said you showed the picture of the sanctuary. Were you telling the truth? All right. So you have a problem with credibility here. Because Willie White also wanted no contention between the brethren. And so he said, you know what? We have to look at Ellen White in the whole context. We have to understand here in the whole context. You know, we don't want to just pick and choose words and just hang people on that word. We have to understand the whole context. So Willie White, right? Yeah, okay. I'm not going to read the whole thing, okay? Yes, we've done this before. And then, remember F.C. Gilbert? He's a Jewish convert. Now, he's like a second or third generation pioneer also, but he defended the old view. He defended the old view. And, all right, that's Willie White, okay? Right? He said, I went to Ellen White. I went to Ellen White on June 8th. And Ellen White, when Ellen White met me, Ellen White said, I don't want to speak to Daniels and Prescott. They are being led by the devil. I don't want to speak to them. They cannot come and speak to me because they are going against the old pioneers. You know, the old pioneers, they have, you know, you still have to respect the old pioneers, right? Yeah. I utterly refuse to see any of them who are engaged in the work. And Brother Daniels, you know, he's not even fit to be president of the conference anymore, right? Yeah, I don't want to have any conversation. I was told to warn the people. I was forbidden by the Lord to listen to it. I expressed myself not having a particle of confidence in it. This whole thing they are doing is a scheme of the devil. Now, this is what F.C. Gilbert said. He said this at his deathbed about his interview with Ellen White on June 8th, right? He died in 1947. So this was his confession of what happened when he went and saw Ellen White on June 8th. And around that time was actually when Daniels claimed he went there. Yeah, and then this is what found. And the guest book actually has the name of F.C. Gilbert. And the guest book does not have the name of A.G. Daniels, right? Okay. We've known this one. So their argument has some credibility issues, right? Okay. This is what now we're going to have to read this. You know, we can't just gloss through it. We're going to have to read this, okay? Manuscript releases. This testimony was actually given, it had to have been given to Daniels and Prescott around it's 1910, right? It's published in Manuscript Releases, volume 20. At this stage of our experience, right? At this stage of our experience, we are not to have our minds drawn away from the special light given to us to consider the important gathering of our conference. And there was Brother Daniels, whose mind the enemy was working. Right? And your mind and Elder Prescott's mind were being worked by the angels that were expelled from heaven. Satan's work was to divert your minds that jots and tittles should be brought in. Now you are using jots and you are adding jots and tittles, right? You adding things that the Lord did not inspire you to bring in. Okay. Now you're adding things that the Lord didn't inspire, right? They were not essential, but this meant much to the cause of the truth, and the ideas of your minds, if they could be drawn away to jots and tittles, what? It's a work of Satan's devisings to correct little things in the books written. What were they trying to correct in the books that was written? Early writings. They were just trying to correct early writings. This is the book that is already written. You are trying to correct it. Okay. Have a seat. Okay. We're studying about we're studying about the daily, and what Ellen White was saying about W.W. Prescott and A.G. Daniels. That A.G. Daniels were bringing understanding and changing the understanding of early writings. It's the book that has been written. They're adding things to it, and it is the work of Satan that they're doing, right? To correct little things in the books written. They're trying to correct early writings, you know? You suppose would be doing a great work. You think that it's actually making a new understanding and it's a great work. But I am charged, silence as eloquence. I am to say, stop your picking flaws. If this purpose of the devil could only be carried out, then it appears to you that your work would be considered as most wonderful in conception. It was the enemy's plan to get all the supposed objectionable features where all classes of minds did not agree. Right? Now the people are arguing about it. And this is exactly Satan's plans when people are arguing about it. This is the very thing that Satan has planned that should take place. Anything that could be magnified as a disagreement. Okay? And I was shown from the first that the Lord has given neither Daniels nor Prescott the burden of this work. It's not your job. Satan wiles be brought in. Should this daily be such a great matter as to be? Brought in to confuse the minds. Now you're confusing God's people here, right? This subject should not be introduced, for the spirit would be brought in would be forbidding, and Lucifer is watching every moment. Satanic agency would commence his work, and there would be confusion brought into our ranks. If you're teaching that what you're teaching, there's going to be confusion, right? You have no call to hunt up the difference of opinion. That is not a testing question. The daily is not a testing question, right? We already know about the daily. It has already been established by our early pioneers. But your silence is eloquence, because everybody, almost everybody, most everybody already believe in it. We don't have to argue about it. You know, there's no need to argue about it. I have the matter all plainly before me. If the devil could involve any one of our own people on these subjects as he has purpose to do, Satan's cause would triumph. Now the work without delay is to be taken up and not a difference of opinion expressed. So it's that, you know, you should not be arguing about it, okay? Because we already know what the truth is. And now you're trying to add jots and tittles into it. You are trying to change early writings. I have been instructed that hasty movements should not have been made, such as selecting you as the president. You shouldn't even be a president for another year. Wow. Or even another year. But the Lord forbids any more such hasty transactions until the matter is brought up before the Lord in prayer. And as you have had the message come to you that the word of the Lord resting upon the president is a most solemn responsibility, you had no moral right to blaze out as you did upon the subject of the daily. Why are you attacking the old view? And suppose your influence could decide the question, right? 7 men should be chosen, that men are wisdom and through the working of the grace of God given evidence of reconversion. For any men who are so blinded, you have been so blinded, what? That you cannot reason from cause to effect. Okay, this is very important. You cannot even reason from cause. What is the cause to effect? Okay, we're gonna see what this actually means, right? That they would ignore the men who have borne the responsibility of the work, and those presidents of conferences that men carry the work for over 2 years should be disregarded, and such impulse consequence take place that men would neglect the very work kept before them for years. You know, instead of arguing about the daily, you should have been working the cities. You should have been evangelizing. All right? Okay. All right. We have come to the crisis, either to conform to the character of Christ right in this preparatory time or not attempt. Elder Daniels, you are not to feel at liberty to let your voice be heard on high as you have done under similar circumstances. and understand the president of a conference is not a ruler. He works in connection with the wise men who occupy the position as presidents whom God has accepted. He has not liberty to mediate with the writings in printed books from the pens that God have accepted. You can't change the writings of what? William Miller. You can't change the writings of early writings. Why are you wanting to change the understanding of that? Right? This is actually a very long letter. But you know what? We do have to read this. Yeah? We do have to read this. Elder Daniels and Prescott both need reconversion. A strange work has come in. It is not in harmony with the work Christ came to our world to do, and all who are truly converted will work the works of Christ. I was given the representation of John Kellogg. Okay. See? Okay, remember John Kellogg? Right? What was he doing? He was a very attractive person, right? Representing the ideas of specious arguments that he was presenting. He was presenting what? Pantheism, right? He was teaching pantheism, right? That the Spirit of God is in everything, even in your shoe. It's even in the spirit, even in the sinner, right? The sentiments that different from genuine Bible truth, it is not biblical, right? And those who are hungering and thirsting ever something new were advancing ideas so specious that Elder Prescott was in great danger, right? So she's comparing Kellogg with Daniels now. They want to bring out something that is new, right? Advancing ideas that is new. Elder Daniels was in great danger of becoming wrapped in a delusion. It's a delusion also, that if these sentiments could be spoken anywhere, it would be as a new world. Yes, it could, but while their minds were thus absorbed, I was shown that Brother Daniels and Brother Prescott were weaving into their experience sentiments of a spiritualism. So now they're spiritualizing ideas. Okay, remember, what is the context of the daily? Prophecy. It's events in a Chazown vision, right? Yeah, it's events in prophecy. But what are they doing? They're spiritualizing it. To what? To the ministration of Christ, right? Just like Kellogg is spiritualizing, right? They're spiritualizing it. Then now they say, you know, the daily is Christ's ministration, and drawing our people to beautiful sentiments that would deceive, if possible, the very elect, right? Okay. I have to trace with my pen the fact that these brethren would see defects in their delusive ideas that would place the truth in an uncertainty. Okay, now people are going to get confused about the truth. And yet they would stand out as if they had great spiritual discernment. They look as if, oh, wow, we know what we're talking about. What actually is doing is confusing the people. Now I am to tell them that when I was shown this matter, when Elder Daniels was lifting up his voice like a trumpet in advocating his ideas of the daily, the after results were presented. Our people were becoming confused, right? What Daniels and Prescott is teaching will confuse God's people. The old pioneer understanding is the truth, right? You are working the works of the devil. Ooh. Wow. You cannot argue from cause to effect. You are actually adding jots and tittles to the books that have been accepted, right? Satan would carry his messages, right? Unbelief and skepticism would be sown in human minds, and strange crops of evil would take place. Wow. You know, Ellen White does not mince her words here. Yeah? Your understanding of the daily is the work of Satan. Wow. Okay, this is now this is a letter that she sent to Prescott. We got to read this too, right? It will prove to be a great mistake if you agitate it at this time. The question regarding the daily. Right? Prescott is, in 1908, right? In 1908. He's teaching a new view of the daily, different from what? William Miller, Uriah Smith, Stephen Haskell, Josiah Litch, all those old pioneers, they have a different view of the daily. You're bringing something new, which has been occupying much of your attention of late. I have been shown that the result of your making the question a prominent issue would be that the minds of the large number will be directed to unnecessary controversy, and that questioning and confusion will be developed in our ranks. Cannot you see that if this question is agitated now, that minds would be unfavorably impressed, and that many who should be seeking must earnestly for the saving grace of Christ would be drawn into controversy? And there are some who would make capital of this matter to turn souls away from the truth. My brother, let us be slow to raise questions that will be a source of temptation to our people. Okay, now look at this one. This is very important. You suppose that a mistake has been made in the view, in the old view, that has been held by some of our brethren in regard to the sanctuary question. Now you're saying that it's not prophetic, it's actually Christ's ministration in the sanctuary. There have been different opinions regarding the daily, and there will continue to be. If the Lord has seen fit to let this matter rest for so many years, see, why? We don't have to change it. We don't have to correct it. Would it not be wisdom on our part to refrain from presenting your views concerning it? Why are you changing it? The Lord did not want it changed. I advise you not to present your ideas before our churches, but let this matter alone, because at this period of our history, the enemy will be served by an attack made on us regarding our disagreement on this point. If it is made prominent, and this will lead to a worse issue. People really don't understand the daily because they really did not and don't want to teach it, right? So Ellen White says, when you're studying the testimonies, you have to consider the context. The time and the place must be considered. Okay, so we're understanding the context, right? We want to understand context. You have to know the correct context. And when you want to study something new and bring something new, can it be in conflict with the old established view? No, it cannot, right? The fresh unfolding of the truth has to glorify the old, right? The new views have to glorify the old, right? Yeah. Then she says, the subject of the daily should not call for such movement as been made, as a result of the way this subject has been handled by men on both sides. Now he says, okay, people on both sides, right? People on both sides are wrong. Question has arisen and confusion has resulted. Others of our brethren have not been guided by wisdom and have not reasoned clearly from cause to effect. Okay, we're going to have to deal with this. What is the cause and what is the effect? Right? When you're studying the daily, Prescott and Daniels cannot reason from cause to effect, right? Okay, we have to see what that means. In regarding to the results of their efforts to uphold their views regarding the interpretation of the daily, while the present condition of difference of opinion regarding the subject exists, let it not be made prominent. Let all contention cease. At such a time, silence is eloquence. All right. Wow. This is a long, right? Now she's saying, I have words to speak. Now, from east to west, I request that my writings shall not be used as a leading argument to settle questions over which there is now so much controversy. So I'm talking to Elder Haskell, Loughborough, Smith, and our leading brethren. Who are these? The old pioneers. You pioneers, you cannot use my writings. Don't use my writings to interpret the daily. Why? You don't need my writings. You need the Bible. You have to understand the daily directly from the Bible. It has been presented to me that this is not a subject of vital importance. It has already been settled, right? It is not vital. Right now it's not important. I'm instructed that our brethren are making a mistake in magnifying the importance of the difference in the views that are held. I cannot consent that any of my writings shall be taken as settling this matter. The true meaning of the daily is not to be made a testing question. I now ask that my ministering brethren should not make use of my writings in their arguments regarding this question. For I have had no instruction. I have had no instruction on the point under discussion. Okay, so when you are arguing about this, I was not given a vision, I was not given an understanding as to what is right. Because what is right is already established before. So how are you going to argue about the new view? I was not given anything about how to argue with the new view, right? I see no need for controversy regarding this matter under present conditions. Silence is eloquence, right? The work of the Lord has given us at this time is to present to the people the true light in regard to the testing. So what is the true testing question? Obedience and salvation. The commandments of God and the testimony of Jesus Christ. All right? Okay. Should we take up the work of discrediting our literature? Okay. Right? So our literature, what we have seen, Uriah Smith's books, he uphold the daily. Are we going to discredit that? William Miller, he's the first one that actually taught the daily. We're going to disregard that? What about early writings? You're going to discredit our literature. We would place weapons in the hands of those who have departed from the faith and confuse the minds of those who have newly embraced the message. You know, William Miller is dead already. Uriah Smith is already dead already, right? And now you want to change their works. Wow. Okay. We did this last week. I'm just going to make a conclusion. Remember, W. Prescott, look at this. This is what he said. May I add the word on this general basis? I would like to be understood as being a conservative. I thought would have to proclaim it to you myself, you know? And then everybody laughed because everybody knew that he is not a conservative. He is a liberal. He wants to teach the new view of the daily. Everybody laughs. So what was he teaching? Okay, we did this last week, right? He was teaching that Christ's ministration is the antitype of the sacrificial lamb that is a continual sacrifice, right? Well, is that true? Well, it is true, right? It is true, right? Yeah. But the problem is, right, what did he say? Okay, right. Christ's ministry is a continual ministry, all growing out of the fact that he is his own person continued. Now, you take away this, what if you do? If you take away Christ's continual ministry, you despoil Christianity. This is the center of the whole thing. The question of perfection is it. The whole question of the Christian life is bounded in this. If you take away that which you despoil him of Christianity, this is exactly what the papacy is doing. Okay, this is very confusing because now he's saying Christ's ministration is taken away by who? The papacy. Okay, you have to go and look at Daniel 8 verse 11. Now, you're going to have to open your Bible. Daniel 8 verse 11. Now, this is very crucial right here.
Very scary.
Very scary. This is very scary right here. Daniel 8 verse 11. Right. Daniel 8, verse 11. Yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host. Okay, let's stop right there. What does that mean? Who magnified himself and crucified the prince of the host? Who? Was it pagan or papal Rome? Who crucified Jesus? Pagan Rome, right? Pagan Rome magnified himself even to the prince of the host. He actually crucified Jesus on the cross. And then it goes, and by him, right? The daily sacrifice. And by him, and pagan Rome, the daily sacrifice was taken away. Right? The daily. And by him, paganism was taken away. And the place of his sanctuary was cast down. The place of his sanctuary is what? Rome. Rome was cast down. No, Rome can no longer be inhabited because the barbarians keep attacking him. Then they had to move, right? They had to move their capital to Constantinople, right? Paganism was taken away and the place of sanctuary was cast down. Now the thing is that Daniel 8:11, is this a history of what was happening in a Chazown vision? Daniel 8:11. Is this part of a Chazown vision? Yeah, it's a part of a Chazown vision. It's history, right? But what is what now saying? Prescott is saying that paganism, now Christ's ministration, the daily sacrifice, is taken away by who? Papacy. He's reinterpreting Daniel 8 verse 11 as Christ's ministration. When actually Daniel 8:11 is talking about it's an event in prophecy. It's an event of prophecy when paganism is no longer a religion that can persecute God's people anymore, right? So that now paganism is set aside. So that now who can persecute God's people continually? Papacy. Papacy, right? That's a historical event. But what does he do? He spiritualizes that. And now he says, oh, it's Christ's ministration, right? He spiritualizes this. This is actually very, you need to study this over and over again because this is very crucial of understanding Daniel 11, right? This is very crucial of understanding Daniel 11. So, yeah. The daily is not easy. The daily is not easy. But when you actually can understand what it means, you will know that it's actually all pointing to the papacy and what the papacy will do in our time. Right? Okay. All right. Okay. We're not going to read this, right? But this is what A.G. Daniels. A.G. Daniels, he decided that he was going to study about the daily, right? He was first exposed to the Prescott and Conradi position on the daily while he was traveling in Europe, right? Yeah. And then he decided that it was undeniable and undisputed fact. Now he says, well, you know what? The daily, if we study it, when we study it in the context, in the general context, right? We study it in the general context. It actually means that the daily is Christ's ministration and it is set by the 2300-day prophecy. Right? Okay, 2300-day prophecy. Christ's ministration in heaven, we study it and we understand it after the end of the 2300-day prophecy. After October 22, who saw the vision? Who saw the vision in the middle of the field? Hiram Edson. He saw Jesus being the high priest, right? entering into the most holy place. He was Christ's ministration, right? But was it the right context? See, this is the problem. We had a wrong context. Okay, this is something that we get. Eventually we'll get to this. I think I really just have to go slow here, right? This is something that is very, 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 very important to know. So he actually puts Ellen White's writing into a context that the daily is pointing to Christ's ministration in heaven that is taken away by the papacy, right? It's taken away by the papacy. And how are you able to do that? The only way you can do that is when you do not believe that Ellen White is inspired in regards to history, right? You have to. Okay, we'll go to that. Okay.
So who wrote this?
This is written by. Okay, I'm gonna read. It's written by Bert Haloviak. Bert Haloviak, he's a secretary of. I think he has something to do with the EGW writings. He has all access to all the pioneers' letters. So he can read all these writings and he know, hey, you know what, A.G. Daniels, we don't have any access of these letters. But he understands what A.G. Daniels said. A.G. Daniels, he wants to, he now dismisses that Ellen White is actually inspired in regards to history. He says, Ellen White is not the authority of history. She's not inspired in regards to history. So now what we do when we read early writings, we interpret it in a contextual. And the context is Christ's ministration at the end of the 2300 days. And that is what is being taken away by the papacy. That is what he's teaching. Okay. Is that what it's being teaching now? Yes. It's being taught now. That is what is being taught now. And what did Ellen White said? Your teaching is what? It causes confusion, and who is behind you? Satan. Louis Conradi. Oh boy. Louis Conradi was the originator of all this. He was the president of the conference in Europe, right? He was the leader of SDA work in Europe. Likewise emphasized that scriptures is his own expositor. He rejoiced at Mrs. White's counsel in August 1910 that those engaged in the debate of the daily should refrain from using her writings to support. He said, oh, good. We don't have to use Ellen White's writings. Because Ellen White said, you don't use don't use my writings. He says, good, we don't have to use Ellen White now. Oh boy. He doesn't believe in Ellen White's inspiration. Conradi hoped that the council should be accepted as a general principle for the future. He decided the weakness of the position of pioneers. Oh boy. And their evidence in support of their views of the daily, and stated, no wonder that some of its defenders should clamor for an infallible interpreter of the Word of God. That's why, you know what? They really don't know. They don't really understand the daily. That's why they have to use Ellen White. Ellen White said, don't use me. Study from the Bible, right? Right. Conradi had espoused his new view of the daily as early as 1898 and considered that the denomination exposed terrible weaknesses by allowing Uriah Smith's work to continue to be circulated. Right, see? Ellen White said, what? You are dismissing this literature. What is the most bestseller of the literature evangelist when they're selling in those times? Daniel and Revelation. You are actually dismissing Uriah Smith. Wow. He said Uriah Smith's position on the daily is an untenable position. Conradi considered that it shows the lack of backbone within the denomination. He had successfully prevented Smith's book from being published in England unless they were revised. Oh boy. and intended to continue to adhere to that policy, he wrote Daniel, I believe that it is our duty as watchmen to see that the truth is proclaimed and written on every point. See, we don't have access to these letters, but Bert Haloviak, he has access, and this is what he wrote, right? Okay, eventually Daniels wrote to Conradi. Now A.G. Daniels, remember, the president of the conference, General Conference, he wrote to Conradi in 1910. Scores and hundreds of our brethren have been given the subject study and have become thoroughly convinced that the new view is right. Will go on with their investigation and will become more and firmly established as the days go by. I think every Bible teacher in our colleges in this country believes in the new view and will teach it this way if they teach anything at all regarding the daily. So what did they do? They just let the old pioneers die off. And then they just taught the new view. And remember Ellen White's opinion about the new view. It's taught by Satan. It's taught by the wiles of Satan. It is taught by the angels that were expelled from heaven. And it's going to cause confusion. It's pretty amazing. Okay? And this was what was debated at the 1919 Bible Conference. Okay, so here we go. We're going to have to, let's do a little bit of a summary on what Ellen White says. The mind were being worked by angels that were expelled from heaven. A work of Satan's devising. Satan has planned. Satan's wiles were brought in, right? I'm just putting down what Ellen White, I just cut and paste what Ellen White said. It shows a defect in their delusive ideas that would place the truth in an uncertainty. Brought into confused minds, unbelief and skepticism would be sown. Our people were becoming confused, right? You know, Prescott and Daniels is being led by Satan, and it's confusing our people. A great mistake if we agitate at this time. You cannot agitate at this time. In the present condition, under present condition, in this situation when the majority of us believe in the old view, do not agitate it. The majority of us, remember, at this present time, do not agitate it. Okay. What you are trying to do, you correct little things in the books written. You want to correct Uriah Smith. You want to correct William Miller. You want to correct early writings. To meddle with the writings in printed books from the pens that God has accepted, right? I had no instruction on this point under discussion. I do not have instruction on how to argue with the new view. But we already know that the old view is the correct view. Make no reference to my writings to sustain the views of the daily. Don't use my writings, right? Don't use my writings. It is a subject of minor importance. The difference of opinion, that is, it is not a testing question. The true meaning of the daily is not to be made a test question. What is the testing question? Obedience and salvation. That's the testing question, right? All right. What is it bringing in? Prescott and Daniels are bringing sentiments that are different from genuine Bible truth. It is sentiments of a spiritualistic appearance. You are spiritualizing the daily. In regard to the sanctuary question, have not reason, and you cannot reason from cause to effect, and you are so blinded that you cannot reason from cause to effect. Okay, cause to effect, right? Okay. Okay, now we're going to dissect this early writing, 74 and 75, right? You have to dissect this. And here she's talking about the chart. The 1843 chart was directed by the hand of the Lord. And this part then I saw in relation to the daily. that the word sacrifice was supplied by man's wisdom and does not belong to the text. All right? Okay, this is what A.J. Daniels says. I have never gone to her writings and taken the history that I had found in her writing as a positive statement of history regarding the fulfillment of prophecy. I never understood that Sister White undertook to settle historical questions. He does not believe that Ellen White is inspired in regarding to history. Okay, where's the part that is talking about history? I saw that in relation to the daily, that the word sacrifice is supplied by man's wisdom. In other words, it's actually talking about history. It's not talking about Christ's ministration. So what is Daniel's basically saying? We don't believe in this. We don't believe in this. When Ellen White said this is not inspired. W. Prescott. But I do say that when you come to a simple statement of facts of history, she herself, by her own course, appeals to the facts. And we can do the same. In other words, they don't believe in this. Right? So this is what I'm going to do. Right? They don't believe this, that the word sacrifice, this is history. Ellen White is not inspired in regards to history. So what are they doing? They said this is no longer valid, right? We don't believe in this, right? Ellen White said, I have had no instruction on the point under discussion. I entreat elders Haskell and Loughborough and others of our leading brethren that they make no reference to my writings to sustain their views in the daily, right? And the Lord gave me. So now what they're saying, they said, Ellen White said, don't even use my writings to sustain the daily. So what are they going to do? They cross the whole thing out. Now we don't have to believe this, because he says, I was not told what the real meaning of the daily is and how to interpret it. So what did they do? To correct little things in the books written you suppose would be doing a great work. He has not liberty to meddle with the writings in printed books. But what's he doing? Daniels and Prescott, they are meddling in the writings of Ellen White. They say, we don't have to believe this, because this is history. This is history. And Ellen White is not inspired in history. But what Ellen White, they said, okay, Ellen White, what is it talking about? So they said, okay, the context is the 2300 days. This is the context. Time will not be a test since 1844. When is that? October 22, 1844. So when I saw in relation to the daily, it is actually, when we just throw this out, the relation of the daily is in regards to 1844, when time is no longer in regard to Christ's ministration in heaven. And this is what the papacy is taking. So they're taking the context, but they don't want to believe in the literal word, the literal interpretation. Okay? All right. And do you have any, does this make sense? This is actually a very difficult concept. What they're actually doing, they don't believe in this part. And this is what Stephen Haskell has a big problem. You guys don't believe in the early writings. I believe in the early writings. Now you guys, Prescott and Daniels, you don't believe in early writings. I'm going to defend early writings, right? This is what Stephen Haskell is saying, right? Because they don't believe in the prophetic interpretation of Ellen White, right? Okay. All right, let's see. How are we doing in time? Okay, we'll do a little bit about the daily, okay? A little bit more. So how are we going to understand about the daily? All right, let's see. Daily is taken away. How is the daily taken away? What does taken away mean? There's room, but there's also sur. Room is what? Room is lifted up. Okay, how do I memorize this? A room is lifted up. Okay. So when Daniel is saying room, the daily is room. The room is actually exalted and lifted up. When the daily is sur, what is happening? Is removed. The daily is removed. All right. What about in Daniel 8:11? Yea, he magnified himself even to the Prince of Hosts. Right? What is this taken away? The daily is taken away. Okay, is the daily taken away? What is this? Room or sur? Let's look at the original. This is the Hebrew. What is taken away right here? It's room. What is room? Lift up. So is the daily actually taken away by the papacy? Wait a minute. The actual Hebrew word of taken away is actually lifted up. Wow. And W. Prescott interprets Daniel 8:11 as Christ's ministration being taken away. Being right. When actually the real word means lifted up. Right? So it's lifted up. So when we need to interpret this, right? We need to interpret it also in the setting of the sanctuary. In the place of the sanctuary. Sanctuary is either miqdash or Qodesh. All right? And here it says miqdash. What's the difference between miqdash and Qodesh? Qodesh is always God's sanctuary, right? But miqdash is an earthly sanctuary, right? On earth. It could be pagan sanctuary or even God's sanctuary on earth, but that's miqdash. So the miqdash was cast down. All right.
That's the earthly.
Yeah, that's the earthly sanctuary was cast down. Right? Okay, the earthly sanctuary. Can the papacy take away Christ's ministration in heaven? Literally? No, it cannot. But when you interpret that the daily is Christ's ministration, was the Christ's ministration taken away? When actually the literal word is what? Lifted up. So some reason, even W. Prescott cannot even interpret this correctly. Okay.
So that means to say that these guys don't believe the highly priestly ministry of Jesus right now?
Even they misunderstand it. They misunderstood it. They put it in the wrong context. All right? So he said, yea, he magnified himself even to the Prince of Hosts, and by him the daily was taken away. Okay, this is Daniel 11 and 12. Right? Now let's look at the pioneer view. Okay, let's interpret it in the pioneer view. Yea, he magnified himself. Who is he? Pagan Rome, right? Now, pagan Rome, he magnified himself even to the Prince of Hosts. Who's the Prince of Hosts? Christ. And by him, and through pagan Rome, paganism was what? Lifted up. Paganism was lifted up and exalted, right? And but eventually, because it did that, the city of Rome was cast down. They had to be kicked out of Rome, right? But they lifted up. Paganism was, the religion of paganism was lifted up, right? This is the old view. When you actually interpret it based on a Chazown vision, based on a prophetic vision, because the context is a prophetic vision, right?
But even if you interpret it with the Hebrew, the right Hebrew word, and that would be.
But it's lifted up, right?
It'd be lifted up.
So is Christ's ministration lifted up? It doesn't make sense here,
Does not make sense.
right? It's not lifted up. Okay.
Because at that time, the Christ is.
Wait a minute. At that time, even pagan Rome, he killed Christ, and you know. And through pagan Rome, was Christ's ministration being lifted up at that time? And an army was given to and a host was given him. And a host and an army was given to who? To the papacy. Against pagan Rome, okay? Right, against pagan Rome by mass conversion, by reason of transgression. Remember, everybody was baptized, mass conversion. That's reason of transgression. And it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. Right. So the army was given to the papacy against paganism, by mass conversion. This is the pioneer view, right? It's in the context of history. It's in the context of history. It's not in the context of the sanctuary message. This is not a context of sanctuary message.
Of the 1844 in the 2300 days.
Because Daniel 8, verse 11 and 12 is still a part of the Chazown vision. It's not, we're not in the Mareh vision yet, right? Okay, now let's see, remember what Prescott said? Now his priesthood is continual priesthood. His sacrifice is a continual sacrifice. His ministry is a continual ministry. What is continual? It's daily, right? He says his Christ ministry is continual, it's daily, all growing out of the fact that in his own person continued. Now, if you take this away, you despoil Christianity. And that is exactly what the papacy has done. So what is he doing? He's interpreting Daniel 8:11. Totally out of context.
Just like the Eucharist.
That's like the Eucharist.
It's completely out of context. He spiritualizes a prophetic interpretation. He spiritualizes it. It is completely out of context. And the context is a prophetic history. So now what do you get? Papal Rome, now this is modern theologians' view, right? Papal Rome magnified himself even to Christ, right? Papal Rome? Okay, Papal Rome magnified himself to Christ. And through the papacy, Christ's sanctuary ministry was trampled down, right? Christ trampled down, and heaven was cast down. And the people was given against Christ's ministration by reason of transgression. And it cast down the truth to the ground. So now Christ's ministration is trampled down. The people do not understand Christ's ministration because the papacy has set up a false, a counterfeit ministration, right? That the Pope now is the mediator. That's a false. But they use trample down. When the real word is what? It actually means lifted up. They cannot, this is wrong. They're already even wrong right here. Right? It's completely wrong. This is wrong. It's completely wrong.
So the wrong one will lead to what?
Confusion. Okay, that's very important.
For our end of time.
Because in our time, okay, we'll have to get there. That's a very good question. Jackie brought up a question, how will this confuse people? So now we say, what's the big deal? Why is this confusing people? Is this going to confuse people? Is this going to confuse people? I was shown that Brother Daniels and Brother Prescott were weaving into their experience sentiments of a spiritualist experience. They're spiritualizing history and making it Christ's ministration. They're spiritualizing it. You, W. Prescott, suppose that a mistake has been made in the view that has been held by some of our brethren in regard to the sanctuary question. See? Do you understand what Ellen White is saying? You're wrong. You say that what our brother believes is wrong. You actually apply it to the sanctuary question. This is not about sanctuary question. Daniel 8:11 is not about the sanctuary question. Okay? Right. Now, this is, now you understand this is a little different the way than what we taught daily before, because now we're understanding in the light of 1919 Bible Conference. New view. Now, when you study Daniel 8:13, go to your Bible, Daniel 8:13. What is it in reference to? Daniel 8:13 and Daniel 8:14. Is that still a Chazown vision? Is that a Chazown vision? Then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said to the other saint, "Who is this?" Daniel saw who? Gabriel and who? And Jesus. Daniel saw the appearance of Jesus. What kind of vision is that? This is a Mareh vision. This is a Mareh vision. Mareh vision, right? When Daniel saw this vision, right? Daniel saw the vision. Daniel saw Jesus, and Daniel saw Gabriel. When a prophet sees Jesus, he's seeing a Mareh vision. Okay, right? And then he said, "How long shall be the Chazown vision concerning the daily?" Right? That daily is in a Chazown vision. It's in a prophetic vision. When the daily and the transgression of desolation shall both trodden underfoot the sanctuary and the host. Right.
So this is different daily, the meaning of different daily.
Yeah, it is the same daily, but now the context is what? The 2300 days now. Because this is no longer in a Chazown vision. The context is now in a Mareh vision, right? So you cannot interpret the papacy taking away the daily in the context of a Chazown vision, because that's talking about history. Now here the daily is in the context of how long will be the daily and paganism trodding God's people. How long is it going to be that the daily and the abomination of the transgression of desolation?
So the daily is paganism.
Right. Okay, hold on. We'll get to that, right? So what is the sanctuary here? Is Qodesh. So how long is it's gonna stamp on God's sanctuary and the host, right? God's people.
This is the earthly sanctuary.
So the daily and the transgression of desolation, what's it gonna do? What is it gonna do? It's gonna trodden underfoot. Yeah. Daily is gonna stamp on God's people.
Or persecute.
And persecute God's people, and it's going to stamp on the sanctuary, right? And what's the transgression of desolation going to do? The same thing.
Same thing.
How long is that going to be? How long are they going to continue to?
Persecute God's people.
How long are they going to continue to persecute God's people? Right? This is God's,
Answer is unto 2022.
this is Qodesh, right? Right? And he said unto me, unto 2,000 says. That's going to happen until 2,300 days. The 300 days is the end of when? The sanctuary is going to be, then the sanctuary will be cleansed, right? No longer will they stamp on the sanctuary. Wait a minute. What about God's host? It was not answered. He didn't answer the question. The question was, how long will the daily and the papacy stamp on the sanctuary and the host? Right? And the answer is, it's a partial answer. And the partial answer is, until 2300 days, then the sanctuary will no longer be cleansed. That will be the end of when people do not understand the sanctuary message, because at the end of the 2300 days, what happens? Christ's ministration will be understood. Right? Right. Okay. The pioneer view. Then I heard one saint speaking to another saint. How long shall be the vision? How long shall be the Chazown vision? How long will be the prophetic vision concerning paganism, that religion, the pagan religion, right? And the Catholic religion, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be doctrine for them both, right? The pagan religion and the papal religion to trodden underfoot God's people, right? And the sanctuary understanding. And he said unto me, unto 200-300 days, 2,300 days, then the sanctuary will be cleansed. Right.
So the answer is only
It's a partial. So when is it that, this is going a little bit off, when does the papacy stop stomping on God's people? When can it no longer stomp on God's people, trodden underfoot? When it received its deadly wound, right? Can the papacy continue to persecute God's people after it received its deadly wound? When France defeated it? No longer, right? 1798, right? But when was the sanctuary question? When was the sanctuary no longer being trodden underfoot? When is the papacy no longer can keep away from God's people the understanding of the sanctuary? When the God's people is now able to understand the sanctuary message. 1844, right? At the end of the 2,300 days. Okay, so that's the pioneer view. Right? What's the modern theologian's view? Then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto the certain saint which spake, how long shall there be the vision concerning Christ's sanctuary ministry and the papacy, for both of them to trodden underfoot God's people and the sanctuary? Wait a minute. Does that even make sense? How could Christ's ministry also with the papacy trodden God's people and the sanctuary? How could it be? Does that even make sense? Does that even make sense?
If that's their interpretation, it does not make sense.
It does not make sense. Others of our brother have not been guided by wisdom and have not reasoned clearly from cause to effect regarding the results of their efforts to uphold their views regarding the interpretation of the daily. Because now they are not reasoning from cause to effect. What was the cause?
It's the persecution.
That the paganism is no longer able to persecute God's people. What is the effect?
There's persecution. And then the effect would be like the stopping.
Right. Now papacy can now persecute God's people. They cannot reason from cause to effect. They have a wrong understanding. The cause and the effect cannot be connected. Right? Do you see that what Ellen White is saying? Your reasoning is completely flawed. You cannot reason from cause to effect. I'll do two more, okay? Basically, we've done Daniel 8, Daniel 8:11, Daniel 8:12, and Daniel 8:13. All right? Now we're doing Daniel 12:11, right? Daniel 12:11. Taken away. Taken away is either room or sewer. Daniel 12:11. And from the time that the daily shall be taken away, and the abomination of desolation that maketh desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Okay? From the time that the daily is taken away, there's going to be a time prophecy of the 1290. Okay? All right. What's the taken away here? It's sur. So it's taken away. So it's set aside, right? Okay, the daily is set aside. Right? It's set aside. All right, let's do this. the pioneer view. All right. Blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 1335, 1,355 and 30 days. Oh boy, 1335. Okay, here's the pioneer view, right? Here is what if we interpret it that the daily is paganism. And from the time that paganism shall be set aside, right? When the pagan religion can no longer persecute God's people, right? And the papacy will be set up, right? There shall be 1,290 days. And blessed he that waiteth and comes to the 1335. There's going to be a time prophecy from that time, okay? From the time that the pagan religion can no longer persecute God's people, and now it's going to be the papacy's turn to persecute God's people. That's the beginning of the 1290, and that's also the beginning of the 1335, okay? A.G. Daniels. Then when I came back to the 2300 days, she would straighten up and say, that is the thing we never can move away from. I tell you, you never can move away from the 2300. See, A.G. Daniels says, see, Ellen White, what is your understanding of the daily? And what is your understanding of the 2300 days? She says, our understanding of the 2300 days, we cannot move away from it. It is fixed. It was shown to me that that was fixed. And I believe it was, brethren. You might as just well try to move me out of the world as to try to move me on that question. Not that because she says it, but I believe it was clearly shown her by the Lord about the 2300 days. It cannot be moved. But on this other, when she says she was not shown what the daily was, I believe that I take early writings 100% on that question with the daily, fixing the period. See? The 2300, the daily is actually fixing the 2300 days. That is the thing she talks about, and I take the Bible with it, and I take the Bible as to what the daily itself is. So he's saying that the daily actually fixes the 2300 days. Okay? That is his interpretation. What does the daily here say? What is it fixing? It does not fix the 2300 days. It fixes what? The 1290 and 1335. Okay, so this is what they're saying. And from the time that Christ's ministration shall be trampled upon, and the papacy shall be set up, there shall be 1290, and there shall also be 1335. From the time that Christ's ministration trampled up.
Talking about future?
I don't know what they're talking about.
Who knows?
Who knows what they're talking about? So, what is their solution to this? They don't even teach about the 1290, and they don't even teach about the 1335. So have you been taught anything about the 1290 and the 1335 in any Daniel and Revelation seminars?
No.
Why? They cannot even explain it. Because they cannot reason from cause to effect. They have got the context all wrong. Context is all wrong. Okay, how are we doing with time? Okay, all right. Yeah. Maybe we should just stop right here, and then we'll continue next time, okay? This is kind of like a middle, we don't want to get too much information and confuse, right? We know the daily. We've understood the daily for quite a long time. But when we study it with according to what Prescott and Daniels is teaching, this is why the people these days are what? Confused. It is completely confused because
You can show if they take out 1298 also.
yeah, we'll do that. No, I don't think we can do that now. Right. Yeah, maybe I could actually do that. Yeah. All right. Oh boy. We can do it now. We can do it later. Okay, we have to do it later. I don't think we can do it now. Yeah. All right. Okay. We will. I'm gonna answer your question. Okay. Let me just finish this. Okay, so we can answer it leisurely. All right. Yeah. We will continue this next week. Okay, because this is so important. All right. And that is a